I used to work in Zone 2, which is from 15th Street East to the 29th Street, and we have a lot of gang members living in that area. And I used to work afternoons too, so I used to get in contact with all of them, and that's how I got involved in it. Working in that area is you kind of have to.
Is there any specialized training you've gone through that prepared you to work the gang unit?
Yes, my partner, Officer Piper, and we are certified through the FGIA. We got the training and to be gang specialists. So now that's what we do for the city of Bradenton.
What did that training entail?
Training in every single gang identified, including LA gangs and local.
How long was that training? How long did that last?
We go through a year. Every year we go to this week training with the FGIA, who is the one that's in charge to give us the training. We meet with different agencies, federal agencies, local agencies, and other states in this conference, and we exchange a lot of information and training.
So what does FGIA stand for?
Florida Gang Investigators Association.
Very good.
Okay, we're gonna go through in a minute through an area that's frequently by SIR 13 gang members.
Can you tell us a little about SIR 13? What does SUR stand for?
That means South. We have SIR 13, we have Norte 14, which they don't get along. SIR 13, basically they use the blue color to identify themselves.
When they spray graffiti?
They wear their clothing, items, pretty much everything will be blue. Everything, spray paint for graffiti, clothing, bandanas, everything is going to be blue.
And what about the other side of the gang? What's their colors?
For Norte, they use the red to identify themselves. That's including clothing items and bandanas and everything else.
How many gangs do you guys have you identified in Manatee County as a whole?
We have 23 active gangs.
That's a lot for a relatively small area.
Yes, we have 23 active gangs in Manatee County. And of course, whatever the county's got, we have it here, or if there's anything going on in the county, we always end up with either part of it or the end of it here in the city. That's why we work so close to them every day.
What do you think the attraction is to a young man or woman to want to be in a gang?
Well, we pretty much ask that question to every one of them every time we talk to them, and what they tell us is that they're family. They look at the gang as the family or that they never had.
So most of them are from broken homes where there's not maybe both parents there or any parents at all there? Sometimes
they just want the attention. Anything that a family can bring you, that's what they see in the gang. The only thing is that there are no restrictions like in the house.
How do the parents that are home deal with it when they find out that their kid's in a gang? Do they try to get them out, or they just say, oh, they'll let it run its course, or what?
Well, I've had parents telling me, well, I know that my child is involved in gang activity, but they pretty much say I can't control my child anymore because it's too late.
What is the average age of a gang member?
Well, we have seen really young gang members from middle school age to as old as 40-year-old. The average age that we see around here is from 15 to 17 years old.
What do you tell the parents when you arrest a 15-year-old? I mean, and what kind of proactive approach does the City of Bradenton Police Department do to try to neutralize growth in the gang activity?
Well, first of all, we're not going to cover it up. We're going to tell the parent this is what you're dealing with. Your child is involved in gang-related activity, and we will tell them the reason why we're saying that. And we're very careful with the parents when we say that, because we have to I like to be really specific. I like to explain myself really good so they can understand that the problem that they have with their child.
What would you advise parents of kids who aren't in gangs to look out for before they maybe get in a gang, but maybe heading in the direction where the gangs are maybe actively recruiting them or trying to get them to join? What would you look for as far as warning signs?
Warning signs, I'm going to show you later because I have a lot of stuff at the substation. We have, the parents can look at the writing. If the child starts writing in a different way, like backwards letters, using numbers as letters, drawings, colors. If the child starts just wearing blue, and I'm not saying that if a child starts wearing blue, hey, he's a gang member. But most likely, you're not gonna see a 13 gang member wearing red, or a norteño wearing blue.
What are some of the names of other gangs in City of Bradenton or in Bradenton period?
We got a little bit of everything. We have Sur 13, Norte 14. We have Brown Pride Locos. We have Latin Kings. Like I said, a little bit of everything.
I notice on the back of windshields sometimes there was like such and such country club or Latin Kings or whatever it may be. I mean, it seems to me that would be a hazard if you happen to be driving in the wrong neighborhood and you had that in the back of your vehicle. I don't know.
Well, sometimes we have the criminal enterprise that call themselves, instead of gangs, rap groups or car clubs. That you're gonna see it, and it's getting.
Are they in fact gangs, or at least organized some group in some capacity?
The thing is that we have gangs and we have criminal enterprises. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It all depends on what they do, and if they meet the criteria to be a gang, or they're just criminal enterprise. Well, we also have the so-called rap groups. They do their narcotics activity, and they will also call themselves rap groups, and they try to hide the fact that that they're making money out of the narcotics sale, and saying pretty much that money's coming from the CD sales or whatever, even though they talk about the narcotic activity in their songs, in those CDs. So
you had mentioned that you see kids in gangs as early as middle school. How do the gang members recruit them at that age?
they can do it at school. They can use the school areas. It can happen anywhere, even over the internet.
So the internet is a big source of gang recruitment?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
What would you tell parents about that as far as their kids and computers?
Supervision is the key to control what's going on in your household, and also education. They have to educate themselves in what the gangs are, so they can identify the first stages of what joining a gang is, so they can stop it on time.
Next is a two-part question. What is the avenue of choice to, once you ID'd somebody, say a young man that's in a gang, pretty young kid, how do you try to get them out of that gang? And number two, what sort of obstacles is he facing from the gang if he tries to get out?
We have a lot of programs. There's school programs, after school programs, and in the county pretty much have the same thing. A parent can give us a call anytime, and we can help if they don't know how to identify it, or they think that their child is involved in any type of gang activity. They can give us a call and we can help them. We have done it before. The problem is that when they're like deep in the gang, they can also face what they call violations and get hurt.
Tell me about gang initiations. What are some of the typical, or if there is such a thing, initiations when you get into a gang?
It all depends. It can be beatings. There are different ways of what they do. I haven't heard of any in Manatee County, but for females, and sometimes can be sexed in to the gang, and you can also be born into the gang, which is when you have a family member that is already in the gang.
Let's talk about girls in gangs for a second. What is the percentage of females that are in some of these gangs in Bradenton?
I'm not going to tell you that's low. We do have females involved in gang activity, and it seems to be increasing too. They're pretty much, I see them just like the guys, pretty much. I don't see them being high into the gang as like having a rank within the gang, but they are involved in gang activity too.
Do the same things draw a girl to a gang as draw a boy to a gang?
I don't see that much difference.
What kind of hierarchy rank-wise do gangs have?
Just like any other military, or they have their lieutenants, they have their captains, it's pretty much the same thing.
How do you make rank?
Getting involved in different criminal activities, jail time, could be anything.
What exactly are the different gangs fighting against each other for?
Might be for, like I said before, that you can piss off a gang member by doing anything. Looking at them the wrong way, talking about them, wearing the wrong colors, I have gang members here that grew up together and now separated by the gang.
So it comes down to almost blood is thicker than water type thing. They'll forego a friendship in order to be in a particular gang.
They don't care about the past. They don't care if they grew up together. They're just separated now by the gang, pretty much. Like, we have a family here that's been there forever, involved in gang activity, always involved in criminal activity, and they've always been there. And after being identified, now is that we know that it is gang related. Maybe prior to that, it was just a battery, or it was just I don't know, maybe it was a domestic or whatever. But now, since they're identified, now we can say, yeah, this is gang related, or this is not gang related.
What type of outreach in the community do you do to sort of kind of get a feel for what's going on and how you might be able to hopefully turn some people in a different direction?
We visit schools all the time. Every time we see them together, we stop by and we talk to them. Like I said, if a parent call us, or we identify this kid and we feel that we need to stop by and talk to that parent about it, we do it. And any identity, any school, any parent that might want to call us, we can just stop by the house and talk to them about it, try to educate more the public into what the gangs are and what to look for too.
I got a question.
Lixa, as a Hispanic female officer, and there's obviously a fair amount of Hispanic gangs in the community, how are you received by them, and how do you sort of get your foot in the door?
I've always received the same respect from gang members, from everybody in the community. I've never been different to a guy or a white male or a black female. Never been different, never been treated different, not even by our gang members. I have always been treated the same.
Do you feel that it's an advantage for you to be able to get in the door perhaps with some of the Hispanic community because they may trust you more than they would trust somebody else?
It might be different when it comes to the language barrier. I can communicate with them better than the other officers. But like when I go to places with my partner, he's got people that will talk to him more than they would talk to me, and I just translate for him.
So it really comes down just to building a bond with somebody one-on-one.
Yes. And you know, the thing is that my partner and I were treating people, and meaning the gang members, with respect. You should always treat people with respect. You give respect, you give, and you will get it back even from them.
So you've had exposure to gangs prior to coming to Bradenton. Tell me the differences that you see.
Prior to, I started noticing that we had gangs here in Bradenton, and by the graffiti, and by the comments of other people telling me, hey, this is this is that. I wasn't familiar when I first got here with the Bradenton in Florida, what was going on, which is in the gang world completely different to what I was used to back in Puerto Rico. And it will be the same. Like if you go to LA, you're not going to see the same things that you see here in Bradenton. You will probably see things very similar, but it's not going to be the same exact thing. graffiti is gonna be different. Gangs that get along back in LA, Texas, they will not get along here in Florida and stuff like that. It's just
So really, it's a regional thing. When the two gangs may have an understanding in one area of the country, but in another area they may hate each other's.
Yes, it's like prison gangs. They will probably get along inside of the prison, but not outside of it.
How big is the prison as a factor in the gangs in Manatee County? I mean, do a lot of them get it when they go to prison and come out and then hook up with the guys out here, or vice versa?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they join outside and of course get involved in criminal activity and go to jail and keep up with the gang activity or relationship inside of the prison, or vice versa.
In prison, I could see being in one for protection purposes because you don't want to be out on your own, but once you're out, I would think that, I mean, what happens, this may sound a little strange, but what happens to gang members when they're too old to be a gang member? What do they do?
We have, like I said, we have a family here that they're like really, really, really old, and they're still, that's pretty much a way of life for them, a lifestyle. Well, graffiti is pretty much the paper of the street. By reading graffiti, you can see which gang do you have in which area, identify them. You can also identify the name of the individual sometimes. You can identify which gang they don't get along with, or which individual they don't like, pretty much.
Okay, what does this say?
This one will be one of our local gangs expressing themselves with graffiti here. We have the initials of the gang, and underneath the initials of the gang we have the gang that they don't get along with. They use the number and a K for killer.
Okay. So your job at BPD, when you find this kind of stuff, is to pretty much neutralize it as soon as you find it?
Yes, we do have the Operation Sunshine program, which targets graffiti in the city of Bradenton. We have a graffiti removal. We go over to the place where the graffiti is, and either we can either spray paint it right there and then, or if it's too big, we can have the city crew and paint it over. But that's have to be fast, as fast as we can. We just do it right away.
All right, that's nice to know that the city has that program. You want to show us what you normally do?
Well, we just spray it, and either we get rid of cleaning it with spray paint remover, or like I said, we spray paint it, or we have the city crew coming to spray paint it. There's a very aggressive program that we have.
How long has it been in existence?
We have been working with it for probably a little bit over probably like 2 years, I believe. Okay.
Why is graffiti such an important element in gang activity?
They identify their turf, pretty much. They identify the gang, their turf, pretty much. They identify 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 their turf, pret by doing this, they tell other gang members, I live here, this is my place, come here.
So stay out of our area.
Yeah, which it can be also be used by other gang members to know where they live and start problems. So
You call it the graffiti of the streets, the newspaper of the street, I'm sorry. Can you expound on that just a little bit? This is the way all gangs communicate with each other?
pretty much all of them. Like I said, they will tell other gangs to stay away, or that they don't get along with them, or stuff like that. They just try to keep away other gangs from coming to that area. That's what we do.
Does the color of the paint they use matter, or is it just whatever they happen?
Yes, it does and it doesn't. Sometimes they just use whatever they can get a hold of. Not all the time we can just interpret it by just the color of the paint.
What would be the punishment if you were to catch the person who sprayed the graffiti on there?
Criminal mischief is an offense that we're gonna, especially if it's graffiti, they're gonna go to jail, straight to jail, no matter what. We're not gonna give a break. We catch a person doing this, it's gonna go to jail. Period. The end.
When do they typically do this? Nighttime, late, or?
Most likely during the nighttime.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Officer Ben Piper, who's also with the gang unit with the Bradenton Police Department. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Ben, I want to get your take on things. We've interviewed Lixa. She was extremely helpful and informative, but you have some stuff here. Can you share with us some of the gang paraphernalia that you have here and what exactly it is?
Yes, sir. What we have here is several bandanas that we have that most of our current gangs in the county choose to wear. A clothing line from a gang, different hats, pictures of graffiti, and CDs that they put out.
Lixa told us that the graffiti is the newspaper of the street, so to speak, the paper of the street. Do you concur with that?
Absolutely. That's how we know, before we talk to anybody out on the streets, if there's problems, they're going to spray paint it up somewhere and let us know what's going on usually before there's any action involved.
I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Lixa. What type of training did you receive to work in this type of unit? It's kind of specialized, obviously. Where did you get your training?
Well, one, just growing up, always been interested in the gangs. Grew up in, I don't want to say a rough neighborhood, but definitely an area where there was gangs. And also, just being with the police department, several classes, conferences, and things of that nature.
From the time you entered into this sort of specialized area, how have you seen the complexion of the gangs in Manatee County change?
We've seen, well, we thought we had a good hold. We knew what was going on. Obviously, we didn't have a control over it, but we knew who was who and what was going on. Just within the last year, our numbers have skyrocketed. Our shootings have gone up, our stabbings, you name it, fire bombings, it's increased dramatically.
Is it mostly gang against gang or gang against anybody?
Very rarely is it gang against somebody else. Almost always gang on gang.
And the prize for this, for being the best gang, so to speak, or the strongest gang and the most powerful gang, what's the draw? What is it?
I guess you'll really have to talk to the gang members themselves. Most of them will tell you they're in it for family or power or respect. Some of them feel as if they don't have a home at their actual home, so they leave there, go to the gang life for a sense of belonging.
Lixa echoed that you're echoing the same thing she said. She goes, that becomes like a family to them, and I guess for those of us who are not in gangs or not that informed about gangs, it's hard to believe that you would forego your blood family to be in a gang, but I assume there's contributing factors.
I'm sure, every person who joins a gang has their own reasons for doing it, whether it's, an organized, more of a criminal organization like the mafia or a biker outfit or whatever the case is. But as we find with lots of these kids, we find them hanging out with each other more than they hang out at home. So it really does become a family to them.
Do you think there's aggressive recruiting going on right now?
Absolutely. We've arrested kids in the junior high schools for criminal street gang recruitment.
And I had spoke with Lix about this regarding what appears to us as an escalating level of violence and more brazen activity, with less concern for the fact that law enforcement may or may not be present when they do their acts. Do you agree?
Absolutely. If we all remember Easter Sunday at Coquina Beach, the MAGTAF was there, which is the Multi-Agency Gang Task Force. We were less than 100 meters from that shooting, and there was 15 of us all wearing black uniforms. There's no way they didn't know we were there. We stuck out like sore thumbs, and they didn't care. 3 people ended up getting shot that day.
That's kind of what made me sort of scratch my head. Like, I mean, these guys obviously knew you were there. Was a huge police presence there, yet they still chose to do it. How high can it go before it sort of, flattens out?
I don't know. Who's to say? I don't know. They keep evolving, and we keep trying to adapt to figure out what they're doing, what's going on, and I guess the sky's the limit.
What kind of strategies, from a proactive standpoint, is the City of Bradenton Police Department doing to sort of counteract that and neutralize it?
There's several organizations and committees being brought up, because what had happened was nobody wants to admit that they have a gang problem in their community, whether it be the sheriff, the chief of police, or the mayor. Nobody wants to admit it. And far too often, by the time the community realizes there's a gang problem, it's too late. And so far as law enforcement, too many times, by the time we get involved, it's too late. The crime has already been committed. And so we deal with these individuals, they've already shot at somebody, they're already in the gang. So what can I do other than arrest them and try to get them prosecuted to jail time? That's obviously not the best answer. We want to stop it. So then it goes back to the home life. What's going on at home? Because law enforcement, we're only there so often, so many minutes out of the day. Teachers are only there during the school time hours. These kids usually don't go to school anyways. So that leaves the parents. Parents are usually coming from broken homes. 1 mom, 1 dad, 5 kids, not enough time to go around. Parents are working 2, 3 jobs, and they're not recognizing the warning signs that their child is involved in a gang until it's too late.
You had mentioned to me earlier before we started the interview about the people and the 2 types of gangs.
Folk Nation and People Nation.
Can you expound on folk, people, or sorry, you tell me.
All right, well, what it is there's 2 different nations, mostly nationwide, and most gangs in a community are going to fall under one nation. Doesn't really matter who they are or what they are about. Everything's going to be to the left or to the right. And that's one sign on how you can tell if you're out with gang members. If all of them have their left pant leg rolled up, there's something going on. There's an organization there somehow.
The left or the right? Literally just the left or right, or is there something meaning behind the left and the right?
The meaning goes way back. Gang history is kind of whatever law enforcement can pick up. It's not like well-documented U.S. history. So they'll always be to the left or to the right. I'll never go out with a certain gang and one day their bandanas are on the left. That's never going to happen. But sometimes they might be, depending if their hats are to the right, and they usually are to the left, you have to reverse it, because if you're looking at them, it's to the left. So they'll try to, anything to throw us off. Their shoelaces might be laced left over right, and that might be the only difference.
So give me sort of like a brief example of the 2 nations. What's the origins of each one, and how do they differ, and why don't they like each other?
Well, the Folk Nation goes back to Chicago with the Gangster Disciples and gangs of that nature. People Nation, I'm not 100% sure of. I know that Crips out here in the Midwest and East Coast, Crips are going to be Folk Nation, Bloods are going to be People Nation.
That's interesting, and apparently there can be certain regions of the country where Crips may get along with certain other gangs but then they may, in another part of the nation, they may be total mortal enemies.
Correct. And in some parts of the country, if you look at California, you see lots of the rappers who are in Bloods and Crips or whatever gang they're a part of. They'll come together for their musical connection. I mean, they're going to make a lot of money off of it, so they'll come together for that. But really, on the streets, they're really not getting along.
So let's talk a little bit about graffiti. We got the chance to see some when we were riding with Lixa, but that is such a critical element. It's got to be for intelligence for you guys, because like you say, if they're going to get ready, something's go down, they're going to start spray painting. How did you learn how to read that stuff?
Basically, just based on my training, we go to the schools and stuff, and they'll teach us how to read it, and then also you just spend enough time around it. You just look at a picture or a wall and you already know what it says, you know what it means, if things are crossed out, aren't crossed out, if there's a K next to something or if there isn't. You can tell if it's what we call a war wall or just a graffiti wall.
What's a war wall?
A war wall is going to be where more than one gang is writing death threats basically to each other back and forth on the same wall.
Do they ever get so specific as do they kind of give a general time frame of when they think they're going to carry it out?
There's never been a time frame, but we have seen in past where a certain area gets hit and hit and hit and hit, and then we'll clean it off more, and then boom, there's drive-bys that weekend.
And the drive-bys are what? Simply to come and say, listen, we're the ones who rule, you don't, and if we catch you out, we're going to kill you?
Basically just intimidation. They feel they have to wipe out their enemies, so.
We just had a horribly tragic incident, as you know, happen a few days ago, with the young man who was killed, a 9-year-old, and that was just a victim in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's only so much you can do. You can't stop it from happening, but what, in your opinion, being a gang specialist, what is the mentality of the gang when something like that goes down? Do they have remorse for it, or they're like, well, that's just the way it is on the street, or what?
You'd have to ask that each individual. I'm sure they might say they don't have remorse, but I don't think any human being cannot feel remorse after accidentally hitting a 9-year-old child and robbing him of his life. He had nothing to do with it. If it was one of his rivals, it's a different story. That's what they do, but not an innocent child, no.
So what would be a typical repercussion for something like that from the other gang that they were trying to shoot? Will they exploit that?
They may very well. It's, that little child, he might be a cousin of somebody that's a gang member. Well, now they know which gang did that, so now they're going to retaliate.
Where do you see things in, like, say, 3 to 5 years? I know that's not asking to be a fortune teller, but based on what you've seen so far, where do you see things in like 3 to 5 years from now?
Well, based on the last year, obviously everybody's now recognizing that there is a gang problem in Manatee County. Yeah. Law enforcement, we've stepped up our game. It's going over bigger investigations and bigger cases. We're working these guys federally now, not just singular kids for individual acts. We're going after complete entire organizations. The community's now getting the training that they need to know when they can recognize if there is a gang in their area or if their son or daughter is starting to lean towards the gang life.
What would be your message to parents whose kids maybe aren't in a gang yet, but maybe sort of in a gray area where they could potentially get drawn in or recruited?
You have to watch your child. If they start, just like, a child with drug use, they start lashing out easy, grades are slipping, they're not going to school. Just like in gangs, if all of a sudden they won't wear red anymore and only blue, there's a sign there. That's, we all have our favorite colors, but all of us don't refuse to wear anything, necessarily. They stop going to school, they fight a lot, tattoos, just out of the blue, things of that nature.
Tell me how tattoos fit into it, because tattoos are in vogue with everybody right now, not just gang members. How do you guys delineate between what's potentially gang tattoos versus going into a tattoo shop and getting a tattoo?
Well, depending on which gangs are in your area or whatever you're seeing, it also goes along the same lines as the graffiti. Lots of the stuff that they spray paint on walls, they're going to get tattooed on them. So just knowing what gangs are in your area, what numbers, colors, patterns, and designs are special to that gang, that's how you know.
If somebody decides, hey, I don't want to be in this gang anymore, I don't want to do gang stuff anymore, what kind of resources from either the city, the police department, or anybody else are out there to kind of help the kid get out without getting hurt?
Well, any kid can get out of the gang at any time they want. It's a choice that they make. Excuse me. Most of them say blood in, blood out. Once you're in for life. That if you want to leave, you can leave. But there might be some repercussions. And there's nothing that really anybody can do about that except for those individuals. We can only protect them so much. Like I said, we're only there so much.
Right.
When he wants out of the gang, he can come and talk to us. We can help him get out. We can tell the other gang members, look, he's done. He doesn't want to be any part. But really, it's up to that individual and his family to stop hanging out with those gang members. Play sports, music, art, whatever the case may be.
All right, let's talk about some of the stuff we have here. And can you kind of, on this, like for example, this graffiti here that I'd like you, if you could hold up for the camera, can you kind of tell me what the lettering says? It's fascinating to me that you guys can even read it. Some of it's obvious, but some of it's not so obvious.
Right. Yeah, I can. Here you have Sir 13 Graffiti, and over here you have the Slaughterhouse and the 12th Avenue Boys with MS 13 up in here. And what's unique about this is there's nothing crossed out. There's nothing disrespectful in this. So that means that Sir 13, MS 13, Slaughterhouse, and the 12th Avenue Boys, which are the same thing, that they're not enemies right now. There's no beef between them, no problems. So they might be aligning, or they might have just all had a party that night and decided to do it. But we know that there's nothing wrong within the two organizations at this time.
So that would be more of like a graffiti wall versus a war wall.
Correct. This is not a war wall at this time.
All right, let's look at another one, and maybe it's different. I don't know, to be honest with you.
This is a little bit more threatening. It's not quite a war wall because there's only one gang doing this. Here it says you have 13 crossed out, which means any time they cross anything out, it's disrespectful. That means, we're going to kill you, you're wrong, we're right, however you want to look at it. 187 is, everyone knows 187 is the California Penal Code for homicide. All scraps, 187 is really what it's reading, which means a scrap is a derogatory term for one of our local gangs. And like I said, they just write it like that. It says all scraps must die. P.S. don't slip. Down here you have the 5-pointed crowns, which is them aligning themselves with the People Nation.
How do you know that's the People Nation?
Well, everything with People Nation is 5. Everything with Folk Nation is 6.
Man, that's fascinating stuff to me. How about this one here?
This one here, more of the same. It's from the same stretch of wall. But if you notice, the marijuana leaf and the jester hat are still everything 5 points. 13K here. K is indication of killer. They're going to kill them. Here's a 13 with a cross through it and calling them rats because they're saying they drop dimes to the police or to whoever else. And they're going to kill them because it's crossed out.
Okay, so you guys have a very aggressive program as far as cleaning this stuff up as soon as it happens. We got a chance to see that with Alexa. And when did that come to be into place?
I know it was before we started doing this. There was Operation Sunshine, and it was just a graffiti removal program that the city of Bradenton had started.
Is that Mayor Poston that got that going?
I'm not sure of who actually in the agency started it or City Hall. I don't know.
All right, let's talk about criminal enterprise quickly as far as like some of these CDs here, and Lixa was trying to explain to us that they're not necessarily gangs per se, but they definitely do criminal activities, and they definitely do it sometimes in the form of having concerts and the result selling drugs or whatever it may be.
Right. We have several rap groups in the area, just like any area, that they all go by a certain name and or a certain color, a pattern, whatever the case is. And that's fine. If they're rappers, they're rappers. But most of the rap groups in this area try to legitimize themselves with the sale of their CDs or no, we're just a rap group. No, in all actuality, what's really going on is they're drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, they're involved with murders, you name it, theft, robberies, burglaries. And based on that, in Florida state statute, there's an organization that goes by a certain color, name, symbol, whatever. 3 or more people, at least 2 of which commit criminal activity, you have yourself a criminal gang.
That's very interesting. Do you see a lot of like multi-generational gang families, or do you see it?
Absolutely. You see lots of kids that wear certain things, like their parents wear a certain gang, and their kids are wearing a shirt that has that gang logo on it. Or there'll be a certain gang that, by now they're our age or a little bit younger, but there's a spin-off of that gang that's,
Okay.
and it's the younger version. It's all related, but they just go by a different name.
Officer Piper, let's talk about some of the clothing that they wear. They actually have their own clothes lines they can have?
Yes, there's several gangs that you can see here that says Southside 13, which is that of a Sereno. The colors are that of the gang color. On the sleeves, which are tucked underneath, there's an X and Roman numeral X and then 3 1s for 13. Their rival, which would be Northside or Norte, it looks exactly the same as this, but it says Northside 14 on it. Like we said, if one gang has one thing, the other gang has the exact opposite. Whether it's 5 or 6, 13, 14, it's just the exact opposite. And instead of white, gray, and blue, it'd be red, gray, and blue.
Let's talk about the bandanas. That's obviously an integral part of a lot of gangs, and it means very specific things to very specific gangs.
Yes, as you can see, we have 4 bandanas here. And most people would just see, well, okay, there's only 3 gangs represented because there's 2 blue ones. But in reality, that's 4 different gangs. Some guys have a certain pattern. Others, you can see how the patterns are different on these 2 blue bandanas. That's for 2 separate different gangs. They are rivals. So to know what's going out on the streets, know who you're dealing with once more, you have to know what that specific gang is, whether it's red or brown or blue, black, green, whatever that's special to that gang.
And where they wear them on their bodies or how they fold them counts too?
Yes, some guys, depending on whatever numbers are specific to their gang, that's how many times they'll fold it. Whoever started the gang or whoever leads the gang says everywhere to the left or to the right, that's where you're going to find that bandana. You'll never find it on the other side.
Tell us a little bit about the makeup of a gang and the mentality of a gang.
That's going to vary differently from gang to gang, whether it's a Hispanic gang or a rap group or an outlaw motorcycle or something like the Russian mafia or Italian mafia, or even something like a supremacist group that still counts as a gang. They do criminal acts. And so whether their bond, whatever that gang's purpose is, if it's to rap and make money, or if it's a drug thing, if it's a human trafficking thing, or it's a bunch of guys that really just like to go out and ride motorcycles, but really we know there's more behind it than that, or if they came together because their hatred of somebody else from another race.
Well, let's focus a little bit more to the gangs indigenous to Manatee County. What is the group mentality of like the Sur 13s or the Norte 14s, that type of stuff?
I wasn't here when these gangs first came to be here, so I don't really know how all of that happened. But I know that the gang started from people wanting to come together to protect themselves. And what had probably happened was somebody had moved out here from California or something. They felt alienated. That's what they were out there, so they started it here.
What about in you dealing with the gangs, and obviously you've built some pretty strong rapport with some gang members, what is your approach from a psychological standpoint? How do you reach these guys and girls?
Really, you just have to talk to them and know what their world is. They got beat up to join the gang. They don't care if you hit them. That you're not going to get anywhere with that. Or their parents hit them. That's not going to get anywhere. You got to treat them like people. Talk to them, be like, hey guy, what's going to happen to you if you stay involved in this. I've arrested you 7 times in the last 3 years. Why do we keep doing this? You just have to know what their world is about. It's about respect. If you show them respect, they'll usually show it to you. I've never had a gang member try to fight me yet. I make them mad all the time. I arrest them all the time, but with me and my partner, we've never disrespected them in a way that they feel that they're disrespected. We've never trashed their bandanas. They love those things. That's their American flag. We know that if they wear them on the right, we don't even touch them with our left hands. We'll feel their pockets when we're searching them. We see that it's there. We usually don't even take it out anymore because that's what's going to rile them up. They know that if they respect us, we'll respect them. They know when we're messing with them or they're being messed with and when we're doing our job. And usually we just call them over. They come over, we talk. They don't have anything on them. We send them on their way.
Respect obviously plays a critical role, and I keep hearing that word over and over again. Where did the point come where they felt they weren't being respected to the point they felt a need to either form a gang or join a gang?
I don't know. I guess that'd just come back to the home life, whether they weren't getting enough attention, or they look at these other gang members and they see they have all the girls, they have guns, money, drugs, power. They do whatever they want. They're drinking, they're having fun, what looks to be fun. And next thing you know, they don't see the side where their friend gets shot, or they have to shoot somebody, or they've been shot themselves.
If there were a single element you could identify that would potentially change the course of kids' lives who may be thinking about going into gangs, what element would that be?
I'd say just look at the news. Every day somebody's getting shot from gangs. You never know. You're never safe. We have gang members out here that aren't even a part of a gang here. Their gang was in California or Texas. They're older, they're out of it, they still get shot at. It never leaves you. Never leaves you.
How critical is family life, a stable family life, in preventing this?
It's extremely important. If the family was there to begin with, then the gang wouldn't have had to come in. The juvenile wouldn't have had to search for love somewhere else. He would have been getting it at home.
That puts you at a distinct disadvantage because you don't have, unfortunately, the control to control the home life. So that makes it somewhat of a reactionary process in terms of what you're doing. But you guys are pretty proactive. I mean, you're very proactive in the community. You guys are outreach, trying to talk to the kids on a regular basis, true?
Constantly trying to talk to the kids. After every time there's a shooting or a fire bombing or whatever the situation is, we're like, why do you guys do this? And you talk to some of them and they're like, I don't know, I don't really want to do it, but I'll get beat up if I leave. I'm like, we can help you with that. Some of them say, I don't care. That's it. And, I just look at them like, man, you're in for life, aren't you? She's like, yeah. Well, so I don't want to say to heck with that kid, but when I got a kid over here who wants help, and I know this kid's doesn't want help, I'll come over here, I'll help this guy out. And every time there's a shooting, we're like, look, man, that could have been you. There doesn't get more real than that. When they see their buddy there with a bullet hole in his leg or wherever it is.
And it's sad to think that somebody feels like that's as far as their life is going to go, and they're stuck in that. They got to have hope, I guess. And how can the community as a whole, do you think, support them and maybe show that there is hope and there is an alternative, even if you did have a bad family life, even if you did, get abused by whoever? How can the community help you do your job?
But definitely, if they start recognizing that there's a gang in their area, to let us know. Also, when something in their neighborhood happens, there's this big rule that, stop snitching, Well, that's not good. When nobody tells us what happened, we can't do anything about it, and people need to realize that. I know, based on whoever the victim is, if he's a gang member, I know who shot him. I know which gangs were involved, and I can probably figure out that day who actually did it. But if nobody's going to cooperate and tell me, there's nothing I can do about it. So this whole stop snitching thing, rats, snitches get stitches, it's got to stop. Without the community, they see it. This things happen in broad daylight. They can see the car, the license plate. They refuse to talk to us. Therefore, we can't do anything. There's nothing we can do. And therefore, then we get blamed. The law enforcement gets blamed because they didn't do anything. Well, I can't. You won't tell me who did it. I can't just yank a kid off the street and blame him for it. So the community needs to come together, not to be scared of these guys. I know some of them are scared because of retaliation. They can come up, make a phone call. I don't need to meet with them at their house where the shooting happened. I can meet them somewhere else, and we can still get the same thing accomplished. The community cannot be scared of these gangs.
Let's go back to the beach shootings for a moment, because the shooters involved there were not from this area. They were from Plant City, I believe. What's the attraction to Manatee County? Or is it the beach or what?
It can't be the beach, because, we have gang members come up from South Beach. Coquina Beach isn't nicer than South Beach in Miami. And not only that, it's 3.5 hours away.
I just wondered if you guys had any intel on what the connection, why they want to come to Manatee County to do this stuff.
Most of them say it's just tradition, that's what it is. It's a coming together of everybody, and that's what they do.
So they're very steeped in tradition, and they've a lot of symbolism, a lot of tradition, much like a regular family or a club or organization would be. It's just very critical that they adhere to that tradition and don't deviate, otherwise they're showing disrespect to their gang and to their gang members.
Correct, and also, just like any other well, I won't say any other organization, but as was legitimate organizations, they're involved with criminal acts as their primary function.
Well, Officer Piper, I certainly appreciate your time and your expertise. It's been an extremely enlightening segment here. If somebody in a neighborhood does see gang activity, what number can they call if it's in the city of Bradenton to help you out?
They can reach us at the police department, 932-9300, and leave a message for us, and we'll be more than happy to meet anybody anywhere.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
th Street, Sureño, 17th Street, Store 13. BPL crossed out, if you can see.
Yeah.
We got 60th Street, Island bound, Island Sureños, and 17th Street. You have 60th Street, Store 13, Store 13. You got BPL crossed out, which means disrespect for BPL. 17th Street, 60th Street, La Familia crossed out, BPL crossed out, disrespect, X13 for Sir 13, BPL crossed out. Disrespect, showing disrespect to BPL. Well, there's only 3 things that a gang member's gonna, where the gang activity and affiliation is gonna take you: hospital, jail, or the morgue. That's the only things you're gonna gain. Other than that, there's no future for anybody that joins a gang. Nothing at all. They might tell you that you end up being somebody, that you're gonna be cool, you're gonna get this, you're gonna get that. That's never gonna happen. They need to come back to reality and realize that gang activity and criminal activity is not gonna tell you, and it's not gonna take you anywhere, ever. At least we're not gonna let that happen, and that's for sure.
What's that?
This will be Sir 13 disrespecting BPL. You got the word SOAR over BPL, and you have X3 for 13, and you got a big 13 underneath the SOAR.
Hey, can I hear these are the something?
Well, this vehicle was seen in a gang area, known gang area, and as a part of our enforcement and our zero tolerance for gang related activity, he got stopped for the tints of his vehicle, and we got at least one identified gang member that was the passenger of the vehicle.
We want to thank you for joining us on the Digital Lifelines. Special thanks to Chief Radulowski and special thanks to Major Bill Tokinger, but my most appreciation goes to these two officers, Officer Piper and Officer Arostagi. Thank you very much for joining us, and any closing thoughts?
Yes, what we need to do is get the community working with law enforcement. Don't be scared of the gangs here. We can't let them rule the county. That's our job as police and the citizens and the sheriffs. If you have any problems, questions, or comments, feel free to get with us and we can point you in the right direction.
Very good. Officer, your comments?
All we need is the community to cooperate with us, and we will continue with the fight against gangs.
Well, thank you both for everything you do, and we look forward to talking to you in the future and hopefully have some great news coming out of the gang unit.
Thanks.
Until next time, we'll see you from Lifelines.